is Tabletop Weekly, and we are the partners of Solarian Games. I'm Jason.
I'm Peter.
And this week's stories, Jim Ward sets the record straight on Deities and Demigods. D&D's The Book of Dragons comes out in August. White Wolf returns. Two Little Mice release Memento Mori, and Judges Guild muddies the waters.
Again.
All right. So here we go. Let's get started with something for Jim Ward's birthday. So sadly, as we know, Jim Ward passed away last year in March of 2024. And a couple of days ago was his birthday. And so since this is the week of Jim's birthday, I thought it would be good to do a public service, do a little PSA. This is something that Jim posted regularly about once a year, and it has to do with deities and demigods. So anybody who is from the old school or cares about the old school or plays first edition probably knows about the book Deities and Demigods. I don't know if it was I don't know which book order it was. I mean, the first three books, of course, were the Monster Manual, the Player's Handbook.
I think it was I'm pretty sure it was number 4.
Could be.
4 or 5. You're right. I don't know. 4 or 5. Sorry. Go ahead.
It could be because Deities and Demigods, there was a small Deities and Demigods in the original. Well, I don't know if it was in the original white box and brown box, but it came out in a pamphlet form to go with all of those. So it would make sense it would be a pretty early one. So Deities and Demigods, when it was first published, included the Cthulhu mythos, and it included characters from Michael Moorcock's stories from the Melnibone.
Or Melnibone? I don't know. Whatever it is.
I always pronounced it Melnibone in my head. I don't know. But Elric of Melnibone is how I always pronounced it in my head. Maybe Melnibone. It could have been any of those. Anyway, then those were pulled off the market and brought back in print without those particular pantheons or those mythos. And I don't know if I want to say common knowledge. That's not really right. Just the standard understanding. How about that?
Yeah.
Was that TSR didn't get permission to use those. They got sued and they had to pull them down and sell them without that. And so now, of course, if you have a first edition Deities and Demigods that has those mythos, then they are more valuable and everybody makes a fuss about it. And ooh, I've got the original one. Anyway, the thing is, though, that that's not exactly how it went down. This is Jim Ward's book. And so I'm just going to read his annual statement. This is something that he put up. I think he usually put it up around his birthday, and he sometimes did it in different ways. But I thought this was a good one to choose. So I will just read this. And I know you've got it up on the screen, but I've got a bigger version here I can read better.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is from Jim Ward, Deities and Demigods. And this is now him speaking. I'm going to print this out once a year for the rest of my years. I absolutely hate it when ignorant people say TSR/me acted in copyright infringement for the Melnibonian and Lovecraft sections of the book. When I was given the assignment for that book, I listed the various pantheons that I wanted to use. Gary noted that maybe the Lovecraft and Elric sections might be a problem, so he gave me the Arkham House and Michael Moorcock addresses, and I immediately wrote to them explaining what I was doing and asking for their permission to include their material. Wonder of wonders, I got 2 letters back giving me permission to use their work. I foolishly gave those 2 letters to the lawyers at TSR. They might still be in some lost file at Wizards. I would kill for them now. Anyway, we printed up the book and it sold great. We then got a cease and desist letter from Chaosium. And just, this is me speaking now. Note that that's Chaosium, not the Lovecraft or Arkham House folks, the people who actually owned the original copyright. Okay, back to Jim's words. I don't blame them a bit. However, they didn't know about the 2 letters. TSR would have won a court case hands down. However, the company wasn't rich at that point, and Brian Bloom didn't want to go to California, get a California lawyer, and spend time and money winning the case. I went nuts because I had done way more than I was supposed to in clearing the way for those 2 licenses used in the book I wrote. I even offered to write 2 more Pantheons free of charge, but the Blooms didn't want to bother. I fumed for years. Now, when people talk online about TSR and copyright violation, it presses my maximum angry button. Maybe some of my Facebook friends can pass along the word as time goes on so that my blood pressure levels can stay in the normal range. Now, this might seem like a rant, and it is. However, when people say TSR was in infringement, they are calling me a plagiarizer. I consider myself a very honorable man. I would never, ever steal material that was not my own. I will not put up with that moniker. Thanks for listening.
All right, Jason, I'm going to be the first one to admit I believed in that until this moment. I was today years old when I learned this.
Yeah.
And which means I am now going to become a proponent of this anytime it comes up.
Yes.
Of the truth.
Yeah. I mean, it's a completely, if you haven't heard the real story, why wouldn't it? It's simple, right? Oh, they didn't have the right to do it. They put it in, had to take it out. But it's very easy to see how that happened because you got to think this is the 70s, maybe early 80s. I don't know. My timelines are a little off.
I think it's early 80s. Pretty sure
when he says they had 2 letters from the lawyers, he literally means they had a letter from the lawyers.
Right.
You put it in a file cabinet and you don't know where it is. It's gone. There's no file that you can pick up or anything. And yeah, I didn't know Jim really well. We worked with him a little bit at Gygax magazine, published one of his Metamorphosis Alpha adventures that he wrote for us. I'm going to just, kind of glow about that for a minute because I was really happy to work with him. I got to go and have pizza with him a couple of times at whatever the name of the pizza place was that all the TSR folks used to go to, so he was an acquaintance and a professional colleague to a small extent. So I'm not going to try to claim to know too much about him as a person, but I will say this. Everything I knew about Jim was that he was about the most straightforward, direct, and honest person you would ever meet. So every word in that rings 100% true to me.
Right. All right. Wow. I'm actually glad we did this story because I did not know. And I hate being that guy. I do. Like it actually bugs me now that I have actually spread that friggin', it's not a lie, it's a misinformation. Yeah.
But it's funny. If you've been going around with one piece of information and you find out the truth, you become such a advocate for it.
Right.
It's kind of like when you meet somebody who's a recent convert to a religion. There's nobody more Jewish than the recent Jewish convert, right?
right.
Well, yes, you'll be spreading the news.
I will, and I don't believe in the afterlife, but that doesn't mean it doesn't exist. Jim, if you can hear me, I'm sorry, buddy.
Now I do, and happy birthday, Jim.
All right, excellent. All right, next story. All right, so this one is pretty cool. This is D&D's The Book of Dragons, comes out in August. I really like this one because it's more of a kind of like an atlasy type book. It's not just an art book, but information book. But it's not like a rules book per se. So The Book of Dragons coming out in August 2025.
Let's describe this page you're showing right now. It is amazing. I really love this page.
Yeah. This is kind of part of what attracted me to it. I got another one too. I'll show after this one. But for the listeners, there's a big amethyst dragon on the page. It takes up it's a spread. It's a 2-page spread. A side view of it. Of course, got the title Amethyst Dragon, and then as underneath of that, it says anatomy. Or what's it? Amethyst? Purple? Yeah, purple.
I'm saying the amethyst dragon is purple, and it has it's obviously huge and has these just massive, leathery, serious wings, and tail like a stegosaurus.
Right. But of course, they're amethysts. They're gems. Like they're like gemstones.
Yeah.
So that's cool. It gives it, talks about the anatomy and the profile of it. And there's a whole bunch of notes on here. You can't read it on the screen here, but a whole bunch of notes about its, how it lives, its environment. It'd be like if you were going through a biology book and you came across an animal, and this is what you would see about the animal.
The layout of this, it's so nice. Is this a Wizards product?
No, it is DK Books.
Okay, because this is way too good to be a Wizards product.
By a guy named Michael Whitwer. Apparently, he's done other books.
Oh yeah, I know Michael. Yeah.
Okay,
no.
Okay. Cool.
Again, more of an acquaintance than a friend, but we're usually drinking at every convention. So
okay, cool.
Yeah, no, he's a great writer. He's done a lot of great stuff. I'm not surprised that he's behind something this good, because the layout of this, it reminds me of a number of different things. Partially, it reminds me of all these books we used to get as kids from like National Geographic and Smithsonian. Just big, beautiful spreads of everything. And it also reminds me of, there was like a guide to extraterrestrials that an artist did where, it was all these different fictional races, or even the Terran Trade Authority books with all the sort of fictional science fiction. Well, fictional science fiction. But fictional spaceships and stuff from the future. It's presented like a real gazetteer, so it feels very real, but it's very fantastic at the same time.
It's a lot like
I'm judging like by 2 pages, but I'm in love with these 2 pages.
Well, here, hold on. Here's 2 more. Look at that.
And yeah, Brian, that is Michael is Sam's brother. Yes.
So there's the red dragon. Of course, everybody knows the red dragon, right?
But this is such a good red dragon. This is, it's so much, it's okay. So again, to describe it, it's very long. It doesn't feel like a dinosaur or a lizard like some dragons sometimes do.
Feels like a dragon.
Mm-hmm. It actually looks like it might be able to hold its own weight with those big, massive legs.
Yeah. And I like the little details, like the tail, like down by the end of the tail where it's got sort of that fin on it, and you can imagine this thing flying through the air, and that fin would actually help guide, what I mean? Like there's actually thought into the design, like from a sciencey engineering person. There's a lot of thought to this design.
Yeah, it's really great. And it just manages to straddle the border between fantastic and realistic at the same time. I'm throwing my money at the screen right now.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh, you know what? Now that I'm looking over here on our notes at who DK the publisher is, now that I'm looking at the imprint, their logo, they are a very well-known publisher. They don't just do game stuff. And as Simon Harding in the chat is pointing out, they do travel books that are just that well illustrated. So this is great that they went with a really traditional publisher to do this.
What? Awesome. Yeah. So some of the information you can have, so I pulled up, I was going through the information that I could find, and there was a section that was gives a little a bit of what what kind of information is included for each dragon. And under the bronze dragon, there are things like physical traits. It would say smallest metallic dragons with smooth burnished bronze scales and green tinted with green tinted oxidation, long leaf-like wings supported both flight and underwater agility, paddle-like tail and ribbed fins aid swimming, sharp black horns, spined frill, and bioluminescent green eyes.
Ooh, bioluminescent eyes. That's a nice touch.
So they go into that, and then there's a whole section on like how much they weigh, what kind of breath weapon they have, the fact that they're amphibious. It's just really cool. Very, very cool.
It looks like they might not even be bothering to worry about stats or anything like that.
I don't think they are. They said that this is not it's not a rule book. It's a narrative and visual deep dive.
I mean, I see the Dungeons and Dragons logo on it, so clearly this is an officially licensed product. Yeah. And getting to the point of being able to put the D&D logo on something, that's the god level tier of licensing. That's right, way up there. And that's Michael. He's at that level. But this book, I could easily imagine it flying off the shelves at Target, to kids who have never even played a game and don't even care that associated with it.
Right. They'd be like, they'd probably just completely skip over the whole Dungeons and Dragons at the top, like they wouldn't even know what that means.
So we have to get Michael to come on and talk about this because it's not coming out until August. So we'll find out when we can get him on the schedule.
All right. Sounds good.
Yeah. I'll give him a bell. This is beautiful.
Well, from something beautiful.
I'm sorry. I'm just looking at the cover of them. Do you have a picture of the cover to show people?
I have a
That's okay.
picture of the cover. I can't. It's
Well, we'll
not
just
easy.
describe it.
Okay.
So the cover looks like they might be planning to do something 3D. Like
Mhm.
actually have some bumps on the cover because the
Oh,
cover looks like
yeah.
dragon scales.
Yeah, that would be
And
cool.
I'm not gonna be upset if they don't do this, if it's just a picture, but it looks like they might wanna do some actual raised, bumpy dragon scales on that cover.
Oh, that would be fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And,
that would fit.
Brian Kowalczyk says he has their ultimate spy book from DK, so I don't have that. Oh, wait,
Oh,
I might know it though. Okay, I'm gonna go look for that. That's cool.
okay, man, we need to get that.
Yeah.
All right, so from a great story with, really awesome stuff to something not so great and
Yeah,
awesome.
let's go to Judges Guild. I'm gonna
Oh,
bump this up because I didn't want the
okay,
Judges
sorry.
Guild to be the last story.
Oh, we didn't want to leave people on that. Okay, that sounds good.
Yes, it's just like, "Oh, this again. Oh, why? Why is
Good
this
choice.
again?"
Good call.
Oh my gosh. Anyway, all right. So, as we know, if anybody here has been watching in the past or just following the news online, Judges Guild has been persona non grata basically in the um, tabletop world since they made a bunch of weird public statements in 2020. And I'll go into them a little bit, but I'm going to be honest. I think I'm just going to say right out of the top, I think Bob Bledsaw the second, who is the Judges Guild owner, now that his father, Bob Bledsaw Sr., has passed, and I guess his son, the third, I think he's a weird guy, right? But the stuff I'm reading seems like he's not running around trying to deliberately be a hate monger. He's just not good at um, speaking, and he has some really weird beliefs that I don't think most people would line up with. I certainly don't line up with them, but it's just weird. I think this is kind of a situation of you should have just kept your mouth shut.
Yeah, we know people like that.
Yeah, yeah, and I will go into the actual things that got him, quote unquote, canceled in a minute or later. But anyway, so we also know from previous discussions that Goodman Games is going to be publishing the City State of the Invincible Overlord, which was the first third-party campaign setting for D&D and has gone through many revisions, and they're now doing a 5th edition version. So that's great. Problem is that Judges Guild in 2022 said they would no longer work with, in fact, no, even in 2020, said they would no longer work with Judges Guild because of their really effed up statements.
Mm-hmm.
So it seemed like the story was fairly solved, so to speak, which was like, okay, they're going to put it out and then they're going to get, this is Goodman Games. Goodman Games is going to put this out. Goodman Games will get the money and they will give some money to Judges Guild, but all that money has to go to refunding backers of a Kickstarter from 2010 sometime. I don't know.
Whoa.
It was an old one. I don't know how old. Maybe it's very, very old.
Right.
So somehow that's okay. And there's plenty of controversy about whether even that's okay because who cares? Whatever. There's controversy. So we thought that was the deal. So the bullet points here from where we thought things were is that Goodman Games has stopped selling previous Judges Guild products through all distribution channels. Judges Guild will no longer receive income from Goodman Games products. That they had one remaining product to release, a collector's edition focused on the works of Janelle Jacquez. And after this final volume, there would be no future Judges Guild titles. That was basically the wrap up. And then, Bob Bledsaw Jr. or Bob Bledsaw II, I don't know how this works, made a statement, a very lengthy one. We're talking about 1,700 words. I'm not going to read the whole statement. Don't worry.
Right.
But basically, he contradicted what Goodman Games was saying. So in it, he said that Joseph Goodman originally asked to make City State of the Invincible Overlord in 2010. But then in 2022, remember this is 2 years after the outbursts, Bledsaw agreed to it. And I'm actually going to go to a couple of things from the statement here. I'm going to go into a couple that I have highlighted here. So let me just go to the statement. So, like I said, it's an 1,800 word statement. So I'm just going to look at some of my highlights. So he's kind of talking about the guild's 50th anniversary coming up, and he has a very, I don't know if it's ironic, but he has a statement right up front. I always leave politics out of my business life. Now, the one thing that I will say he seems to do is he likes to write long screeds. You know, a 1,700 word screed is not a long one for him. So, and maybe that's part of the problem. You shouldn't, you know, that's not the thing to do. Anyway, so he goes on kind of saying like, you know, I'm an American and I think this and I think that. But then he gets to where he feels the industry is going. He hasn't gotten any of the Goodman Games claims at this point. He's just starting to say some of his opinions. And he thinks that liberals have destroyed gaming or something. So he says, Dave Arneson foresaw all of this. And we spoke in 2008 of what would happen as more liberal Johnny-come-latelys pushed into our industry. Regardless of what the woke may wish, it was an industry created largely by white Christian strategists, most very active in their respective churches. Sadly, the current trends would attack or change the achievements of others, burn an industry down rather than create their own. So I honestly don't know what he's talking about here. What Dave Arneson foresaw, right? Or any of this kind of stuff. And I'm certainly, there's not a bunch of people out there just trying to burn an industry down. Most of the people I know that are making games right now are trying to build and, you know, just make stuff. I don't know if there's anybody burning anything down, but whatever. He goes on to say, Dave believed that once the game industry made more money than the movie industry, spoiler, they have not.
Yeah, good luck.
Yeah, no. They would come in a wave like it was the California gold rush. They would flood the market with so many distractions that honest publishers would not stand a chance against their profit margins. Again, I don't know. I guess maybe Bledsaw thinks that all of the indie publishers today are like B movie studios that are flooding the market with distractions. And then he goes on to say, Dave knew that what Gary Gygax had done was all sold. Maybe he meant solid. And he advised, or maybe he meant sold. I don't know. He advised me to never allow the Wilderlands or the Guild IP as a whole to be sold away to the heartless beast, as he called it. He understood that the Guild, Judges Guild, represented what was left at the heart of it. I'm sorry. This is making me laugh. He's basically telling this story where Dave Arneson, who can no longer speak for himself because he's passed, sadly, he's putting words in his mouth and he's saying, Dave thought I was right. Dave was on my side. Okay. He understood that the guild represented what was left at the heart of it all. It created the game module. It created the stand-up. I don't know what a stand-up is. It proved the market to TSR. But 50 years later, TSR is no more, and the industry pioneers are dying away from us, and D&D suffered a dismal 50th, due largely to leftist posturing and everyone wishing for more of this or less of that. Okay, it goes on and on and on and on. I'm skipping over a ton of it. He's going back to now to the founding of Judges Guild, and he says, we included everyone, and this is his words. There were whites, blacks, Muslims, Jews, gays, Catholics, Native Americans, South Africans, city intellectuals, and country farmers, all working under the guild banner in-house, and all those years, never an argument over politics or religion. Then more talking. And then finally he gets to the current situation after making a lot of more statements about whatever. He talks a bunch about how Joe Goodman wanted to do City State of the Invincible Overlord since 2010. And he says, back in 2020, this is Bob speaking, I had no problem with giving the guild's royalties to the ADL as it seemed the right thing to do after my irrational posts. But we agreed, that's him and Goodman, it was time for the guild to make some cash. And so it was set down in 2022, but I allowed Joseph Goodman to pick his own timing. All right, so this is the first big disagreement with the timeline, I guess is the way to say it.
Mm-hmm. Right.
He's saying that even after Goodman said they wouldn't work with him anymore, that Joe was saying that yes, he would. Now, I don't know what this whole thing is about giving all of the guild's money to the ADL. Maybe that happened. Maybe that's the deal that Goodman made with him, which I think that seems like a pretty good way to handle it, right? In fact, I'm going to take this moment now to go and kind of talk about what it was that really got him canceled in the first place. So basically, he has a Facebook page, and like many people with Facebook pages, he kind of just let loose with his personal opinions on it. But he left them all public. So I don't think it's too out there to say that when you make a public post on Facebook and you're the owner of a company, that you can kind of say, yeah, that reflects the views of the owner of the company, right?
Mm-hmm.
So first thing he put up was something about how he loves Trump. Okay, fine, whatever, go ahead. It was something about he posted some news story from the Washington Times, which is the newspaper owned by the Moonies, and about how Trump was going to kick off his campaign for Jesus or something. I don't know. And Bob Bledsaw wrote, "This could be why the Jews media hates him so much."
Oh my God. Jesus Christ.
The Jews media. That was, yeah. Okay. I mean, look, somebody puts a post up like this. I'm not going to be friends with them on Facebook. I don't want to see their crap.
No.
I'm probably not going to buy their stuff. But, you know, I mean, just shut up, dude. But he kept it going. And then the next thing he posted, I guess, a couple days later was something around, he thought it was a joke. It was a meme of, I don't know, what somebody going like, what is that? And the caption was Santa receiving word that the North has won the Civil War, so he has to switch to elves. So
oh my God.
Yeah, I know.
Oh, dude. Oh,
that's not a good joke.
That's a bad.
You used slaves?
Oh, dude.
And then the next thing he posts is something about Bernie Sanders, because Bernie's Jewish. So he said, uninformed idiots out there claiming a vote for Bernie will make him our first Jewish president. Wrong! Harry Truman was a Jew and created the state of Israel by proclamation, while Eisenhower was a Swedish Jew whose white American casualty rate was itself a war crime. Secretive little guys, aren't they?
What the oh, this guy.
I don't know what's going on here. People called him out a little bit on it, including Jim Bledsaw, who I'm assuming is a brother or something, but he said something about, I guess that makes me a Jew. And Rob Bledsaw said, you're far from secretive, but I'm sure you can remember the stink they raised over Kennedy being Catholic. Hitler would have never considered you a Jew because of your attitude, but I never have. You're a good Christian.
Wait, roll back that. Did you say they stink? Did he say they stink?
No, I don't think. No, the stink they raised.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Okay. Sorry if I muddled it.
Sorry, that sounded. I was like, oh, jeez.
So none of this stuff is good. This all kind of reads to me like a person I don't want to have anything to do with.
No,
none of it. This is where I'm saying that you saw before. I've got kind of conflicted feelings about this guy because I'm only half Jewish, so I only get to be half offended when he says this stuff. But yeah, I read this and I'm like, that's crappy. I don't like his feeling about Jews. But then he tried to make some statements to correct it, or maybe just reply to it. And so he did another 50 million word screed. But in it, he said something about being a Christian whose family goes back to the Crusades, and that somehow that means that, this is his words, I am pro-life, anti-gay, and against self-mutilation. I don't know. Whatever. And then he goes on with a whole lot of like, I've not me to judge, Declaration of Independence, blah, blah, blah. He gets to another part where he says, I have been accused of being a racist. I am not. I have made and keep friends of all ages.
No, he's
I'm
not.
not even pure white, being part Cherokee, Dutch, and Romanian. I don't know how that helps. I don't know how being Dutch and Romanian makes him not white, but the part Cherokee, come on. Every time I don't know, there's some people who always want to say they're 164th Cherokee. I don't know what's up with these people. Anyways, he says, this is going to be the last thing I'm going to quote from him on his protest. He says, my family came to America in 1643, and by 1665, they owned slaves, sold to us by Jewish slave merchants.
This guy.
So, I mean, okay. So, and the thing is, though, all right. So he goes on with lots of I love everybody and everybody's welcome. They're all my friends and that kind of stuff.
Doesn't sound like it.
It reads very much like somebody who's had brain damage. You know, like if you've heard, I don't think Gary Busey has ever gone off on like a racist rant, has he?
No, I don't think so. But he
goes
definitely
off
has
on
brain damage,
stuff, right?
Yeah.
But you get somebody like Kanye, or do you remember Tila Tequila?
Yeah.
Right, and she started walking around in like a Nazi uniform.
Yeah, something happened to her. She lost it.
Lost her freaking mind, right?
Yeah.
I really like, this is the kind of ranting you get from folks like that, where it makes me wonder, is he okay? Just like in the head.
Yeah. No, I get you.
Yeah, and that's why I'm a little kind of hesitant. I'm not saying I would ever do anything with Judges Guild or buy any of their crap, but I don't necessarily feel like condemning him as a human being. I just think he's like messed up in the head.
Right. Like it might not be maliciousness. It might actually be broken. Like he might just be broken.
He might just be broken because
Brian says, let's talk about butter sausage.
Oh yeah.
That's the best meme. You know what though? I see that stuff and I want to laugh at him, but I feel so bad for Gary Busey because I liked him as an actor. Like I thought he was an excellent actor.
You know what though? That buttered okay, here's another one. Let's talk about buttered sausage. That's fake.
That's what?
That's a fake. That's a deep fake.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, I just found that out.
Shit.
I always thought that was real.
Yeah, well, I've seen him say stuff that I know is real that is about as crazy. So it's pretty easy to be fooled by that.
Yeah, I don't know. The Gary Busey thing where he says he has an invisible helmet so he doesn't get hurt.
Yeah, well, I mean, like, the story. He fell off his motorcycle and cracked his head open on the curb. Yeah. And the only reason he lived was because there was a police officer standing right there that got him to the hospital immediately. They said otherwise he would not have survived.
He rolled a 20.
He did.
Wow.
But yeah, anyway.
So back to Bob Bledsaw, whatever. So the point is, he goes in, he says that they donated their money to the ADL, which after rants like that, I think you should. So I mean, props to him for at least putting his money where his mouth is, if that's what happened. And it has been a number of years. And when I see the stuff that he wrote in his long rant, this latest one, I will give the last part here. So he was continuing to claim things Goodman Games was going to do. Mm-hmm. He said Goodman Games will produce 5 years of Dungeoneer. So that's the zine the Judges Guild used to do. It was a good one too. So they will produce 5 years of Dungeoneer, whereupon Judges Guild will take over production of the classic fanzine. And this will allow us to use all the Janelle Jacquet's material and art that was unpublished. You may wait a bit longer than that, but the Jacquet's influence will live on in the coming Dungeoneers, her original dream. So here's the thing.
Good and bad, right?
Well, here's the thing, is that in his thing from 5 years ago, it sounded like he was saying all this, like, I'm anti-gay. And I think that whole mutilation thing was like a weird, like, anti-trans statement.
Might have been, probably.
But I just want to point out that in this whole statement, he consistently refers to Janelle by her real name, Janelle, and he doesn't misgender her or use dead names or any of that crap. So, I mean, that's good.
Right.
I appreciate that. So it's just really hard to say. I just think it seems like maybe Judges Guild is just toxic. Leave it alone. Don't touch it. So basically he made all these statements, muddied the waters, and then Joe Goodman came back out and made another statement against his statement, and nice and short. He said, to make a long story short, Goodman Games. Oh, sorry. Earlier, Simon Harding asked, "What's the ADL?" I should have said that. ADL. See, this is the whole like being Jewish thing. Is I assume everybody knows everything that I know. It's the Anti-Defamation League, and it's basically the civil rights organization for Jews. So,
okay.
Okay, so blah, 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 blah. Joe Goodman said, to make a long story short, Goodman Games has or had rights to quite a few Judges Guild titles, and we have no plans to release any except City State of the Invincible Overlord. The contracts have confidentiality clauses, so I'm quite limited in what I can say. But in short, the information you emailed about, because he's replying to an email, is incorrect. I think it's best if Goodman Games speaks for what Goodman Games is doing, and Goodman Games is definitely not doing Dungeoneer. So I'm way more entitled, or way more inclined to believe Joe Goodman than I am to believe Bob Bledsaw, who may have taken a whack to the head at some point as a child. Yeah. But they have certainly muddied the waters on this one.
Yep. So we'll see what happens. I mean, shoot.
It's a mess. It's just such a shame, because Judges Guild as a company is really important in the history of gaming. Mm-hmm. They really are. And Bob Bledsaw Sr. was a real pioneer in the tabletop RPG world. And it's just a shame to see when, the kids carry on the legacy so poorly.
Yeah. Well,
what a bummer.
That happens far too often.
All right. So you see why I didn't want to end with that story. Let's pick it back up.
Let's go to something fun. Well, here we go, Bob. I got to get to it. Yes. So Two Little Mice. We like Two Little Mice. They actually won an award for Outgunned.
Yeah. And by the way, we should do this at some point. They have another Outgunned coming out soon, like an Indiana Jones Outgunned.
Yeah, I think it's already. I saw the story on that. I think it's actually already out.
Okay. And did we do a story about that already?
I don't know. Maybe.
I don't know what we
talked about. Have to look back through our list. Anyway, so they've got a new release coming out, Memento Mori. It's a role-playing game in which players. This is really cool. I love this concept. They create an adventuring group of drifters. Drifters are people who are sick with the plague despite their condition and the terrible reality of 14th century Europe, and are determined to fulfill their dreams. It says recommended for mature audiences only. So this is a kind of a horror-ish book, I think. Nice. And talking about people with the plague, like you're going to be playing somebody with the plague. But what it does in this setting, the plague actually opens the doors to like a new dark world. You see, I think it opens up the ability to get magic and see things that you wouldn't see if you didn't have the plague. So there's, it says power, suffering, horror, and opportunities beyond imagination. This is
dark. I mean, but in an interesting way.
In a very interesting way.
Yeah.
Now it's 2 books. So you see the 2 books, the one on the left, one on the right.
Beautiful books. Do you want to describe these things for the listeners?
So one of them has a black cover. These are A5 format, hardcover, black and white. So a lot like Shadow Dark.
They're little then.
Yeah, but they're like Shadow Dark. Yeah. So they
look like they're leather bound.
Yeah. And they are they got like a gold, the spine, not the spine, but the pages of the book are gold on the edges.
Gold leaf,
gold trim leaf around the cover and the spine and all. They're just beautiful, and they've got ribbons in them. It says they have a canvas style hardcover with gold lettering and a ribbon bookmark, which is always nice.
Not leather, but canvas, but still gorgeous. And you got to have the ribbon. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
We've done hardcover books before, and the ribbon costs like an extra 8 cents.
Shoot, guys, you got to do it. Yeah. So they're 200 plus pages each. The one book, the core book, that's the one on the left. If you're looking at the screen, the black one, contains everything you need to play the setting and a short introductory adventure, complete with 4 drifters ready to play. Which I think is important, because with a novel concept like this, I think it helps to have an example. Like, yes, you can make your own character, but let me see what a character is in a setting like this. Like, because it's like, oh, make up a character. But like, I don't know how to make up a plague character. Like, I see the rules and all, but what does that really mean? So then the other book, the red book, that is the Codex Gigas. Sorry, I left a letter out. Codex Gigas, including the Beastarium, which is your creatures. Now, this is cool because I didn't know these other two words existed, but they totally make sense. The Herbarium, which is plants, and the Lapidarium, which is minerals. Right? Nice. Yeah, that's cool.
I love it.
So apparently, those are all like they must play a real big part, like collecting minerals for spells or something. I'm not sure, but they must. And then it says, thanks to supernatural myths, descriptions, treasures, and ingredients in the book, the narrator can lead the group of drifters beyond the boundaries of the known world. So it sounds very immersed.
It's interesting, though, that they went with Memento Mori, for a 14th century thing, because I assumed it was going to be set in the Roman Empire.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think probably most people know the phrase Memento Mori.
And remember that you will die?
Yeah. I actually only learned about it like a few years ago when the Streets did a song called Memento Mori.
Oh, okay.
And I love the Streets.
Like Streets are awesome.
Yeah. But yeah, I don't know if this is apocryphal, if it really happened or not, but supposedly when the Roman emperor would go out somewhere, somebody would walk along behind him going, Memento Mori, Memento Mori, Memento Mori, the whole time. Be like, remember you're immortal. Remember you will die.
Oh, right. Yeah.
I mean, first of all, I would love it if that really was somebody's job.
Right.
And how often would the Caesar just be like, shut up?
Oh man. I saw something today. There was apparently in Japan in the 1600s, somewhere around there.
Yeah.
The ladies of I don't know, nobility or whatever, they actually had servants so that when they farted, the servant would say, excuse me, and take the blame for it. Can you imagine having that job?
I would love that job. I'm imagining like a Bobcat Goldthwait doing this job.
Sorry, man, it was me. Anyway, sorry. That's a little
good. Oh my God. There's a Monty Python sketch just waiting to happen, isn't there?
Yeah. So anyway, this looks great. This is something I might buy even if I never play it, because it's very cool looking.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right.
Last story of the day.
I'm happy about this one, actually.
Yeah, White Wolf returns. Okay, so White Wolf. This is the company that actually is much younger than I thought it was. I didn't realize White Wolf was only founded in 1991. But they were, to me, they're famous mostly as the publishers of Vampire the Masquerade.
Right.
So I never played it. Did you ever play it?
Oh, yeah.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so you stuck with gaming during an era that I had dropped out.
Oh, I've never stopped.
Okay. I mean, it's funny because in 1991, I was, way deep in the goth world, right? So, I mean, as a gamer, why
would have thought, right?
Yeah, right? But I mean, I never really liked the I'm a vampire version of goth.
We didn't play it that way.
No. But, I thought it was the first time I ever saw anybody LARP.
Right. Yes. And they would do it in bars. Like they would literally go out and just like not in a place where it's like everybody there is LARPing. They would go into the public and LARP and, mix in with other people.
Yeah. I mean, that perfectly fits for goths, right?
Yeah. Well, we were in a club and they were doing that. And one of my friends is like, what the fuck is wrong with these people? Right. And I was just like, I'll tell you later. Just leave it. I know exactly what they're doing. I got you. I'll explain it.
Yeah, I was living in San Francisco in like the mid 90s, and there were a lot of vampire players who would go down to the Palace of Fine Arts, which is this beautiful, it was built for one of the World Fairs, and it looks like something from 300 years ago, but it was built decades ago. It was a perfect place for LARPing vampire stuff. And so I did go down there while they did it. I don't remember if I played, but the point was I don't really know it. But White Wolf, they are one of the big names, right? For that. Should we call it second wave? I'll call it second wave.
I think it's second wave because I remember when Vampire came out, and it wasn't just the material. The system was just brand new. I mean, it was new. It was fresh. It was like a new, like you're saying, second wave. It was a new way to game. Like it was very new, very fresh.
Yeah. So so they did all this stuff. They were founded in 91. They were sold to a company called CCP in 2006.
Yep. Bad. That sucked.
Yeah. And then after that, they were bought by Paradox Interactive in 2015. And then in 2018, Paradox Interactive pulled the plug on White Wolf over some controversy. Again, I don't know.
It was dumb.
It was misunderstandings, I think.
Yeah, I think it was misunderstandings.
They were trying to create a clan that was basically edgelords. So these edgelords would do anything they could to like make people upset and whatever. And I think what they did wrong was that in the year 2018, trying to be shocking is a little different than it would be in, say, the 70s, right?
Yeah.
So like in the 70s, punks would go out wearing Nazi gear not because they were Nazis. I mean, we're talking British punks here. They had no belief in that thing, but because oh my gosh, I'm about to lose power. Why don't you talk about something really good while I go and get a power cord?
Okay, cool. All right. So while Jason's getting a power cord, yeah. So just to go into what he was saying about the punks back in the day, and he elaborated when he comes back, but that it was literally for shock value. It was because it made people's skin crawl. That's the only reason they pretty much did it. But to go to White Wolf, it was an awesome game that had brand new mechanics, new way of thinking, and gaming, and then it's gone through so many periods of just like weird growth. Like sometimes it was good, sometimes it was just bad. And, I'm really hoping they're like back, like really in a way that they used to be. I'm trying to think of the guy's name who came up with, who originally wrote White Wolf. I know it. I just can't, my brain's not pulling it up, but I've talked to him and he's actually a really cool guy. He lives in Georgia, the country now. And, he's been back with some new products. White Wolf had a whole bunch of products. They had had the Vampire the Masquerade, you had Werewolf the Apocalypse, Hunter the Reckoning, Mage the Ascension. There's a Mummy and a Demon, a Wrath, Hunters, just all these different Changeling. Yeah. And they were all really good in their own way. The only thing I didn't like about the original series of these games was that they weren't totally compatible. We had to make some rules up because I wanted to play a werewolf and somebody else was playing a vampire, and playing them together didn't really work out. I'm not going to go into the mechanics of it, but it was just it was the same game, but there was differences enough that made it really bizarre to like mix them together. It didn't really work. So we made some changes, but later editions fixed that.
Okay. And over in the chat, David Benavides, who publishes creates, I should say, because he does all of it, Troy City Mysteries. He says the original Troy City Mysteries was based on World of Darkness. I didn't know that.
Yes. Yep.
So I don't know if you talked about the shutdown, cancel controversy or whatever, but basically,
no, not really.
They put some edgelords in. And we were saying that in the 1970s, British punks would wear Nazi stuff because it would upset old people who fought the Nazis. That's all it was. They just wanted to shock people.
Like I told him why you're getting your cord. I said it was for shock value. It was pure shock value.
Yeah. Yeah. And when actual neo-Nazis started showing up, the punks stopped that right away. They were like, no.
They even wrote songs about telling them to F off.
Nazi punks F off.
Right.
But that's the thing. It's like, okay, you can't do that in 2018. You can't try to be shocking. And so, they included something where they mentioned that like these edgelords might even pose as neo-Nazis or something. I don't know what it was, but the point was it was not a good look. 2018 was definitely a time where you would get canceled for that. And they did, quite literally, because Paradox Interactive just pulled the plug on it. They're like, nope, that's that. No. We don't do that around here. Probably the right thing to do. But for whatever reason, they are now 10 years after buying White Wolf from CCP and 7 years after eliminating it as a separate entity, Paradox Interactive is bringing it back as the official licensing and publishing entity for all its transmedia properties. Transmedia, what the hell?
That just means books, video games.
No, it's just business speak. It's just this whole let's incentivize our profits, whatever.
Right.
Anyways, for all their properties, including Vampire the Masquerade, Werewolf the Apocalypse, and Hunter the Reckoning.
Mm-hmm.
So they actually will be an independent entity. So there'll be a business of their own within the Paradox Interactive world. They will be co-publishing Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines 2 video game. So I guess that means that will be a way that it helps fund this independent entity. And I guess they will be the publishers of the new TTRPG for Vampire the Masquerade, Werewolf the Apocalypse, and Hunter the Reckoning. So pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know what this means to any of the original founders of White Wolf, if what happens to any of those folks, but a lot of people are going to be happy to see White Wolf's name on things again, I think.
Yeah, I was trying to remember the guy's name. I know the guy. I've actually had him on Mythwits once. We talked about.
Could it be Mark?
Mark, yeah, Mark. That's it. Mark
Hagen.
Hagen. Yeah, yeah. He lives in Georgia, the country Georgia. But anyway, he was telling us during that interview there were some really interesting things. Like he did something similar to like the foundation of Wizards, where he went all in. It was all or nothing. Like he took out a loan. His parents gave him money or something, and he took out a loan, and he made all these promises of stuff that he didn't know if he could do or not, but he just was damned and determined to make it work. And he pulled it off, but he didn't know if it was going to work, and he didn't know if he was going to lose all his money, or at least that's how I remember the story. It's been a while. And there was a TV show called The Kindred, which was in the 90s, early 90s. And it was actually a primetime show. And it was sort of like a 90210, but for vampires, right? Sort of in a way. And there was a problem with TV back then, in that, they had formulas that they followed that they would not break from. And one of the things was he wanted the show to be about the vampires.
Right.
The studio, and that's how they initially went into it. But then the studio was like, we can't have a show about vampires. Who's going to understand? Who's going to be able to follow a story that focuses on the vampires? So the story was around this cop and like someone else, and the vampires were in there that he was dealing with, and he winds up, intermingling with some vampire, and it ruined the show. It really, it's like the show could have been so much better.
Yeah, you can't let the execs get their hands on things. You just can't.
Right.
But there's a lot of things I dislike about the current media landscape, about how fragmented it is and how it's hard for any two people to have watched the same thing or have the same references. Right. And things come out where you're like, that's out? I didn't even know. Like things that would be huge deals. There's a new Ewan McGregor Long Way Home. It's like a new one of his Long Way Round series. It's out. I had no idea it was even happening, right? Just these huge things. So yeah, the fragmentation can be terrible. But the flip side of it is that people can make things and get them out there on their own. So, those executives can't always get in the way anymore. If they could get the money to do it, they could just distribute it themselves, and they could do something really cool again.
Yeah. I think that show, Everything is Sunny in Philadelphia is an example of, putting together something with an extremely low budget, but doing a really good job, and then catching on. And then all of a sudden you become a big budget production, because as far as I understand, those guys just made it happen. Like they didn't have like giant funding. I think they got a small batch of funding. If you watch
how they got Danny DeVito on that,
I think he didn't come in until the second season.
Oh, if I remember correctly. Okay. Because I'm like, he's a legend. You don't just pick up Danny DeVito for 10 cents and a bottle of Coke.
No, I think if I remember correctly, I know he wasn't in the very beginning. He came in later. Okay. And I remember the first like couple episodes, the ratio was different. Like it wasn't TV ratio. It was a little different. So, I mean, I think it was filmed super low budget.
Okay. Well,
but it was successful.
But that's, exactly. That's the cool thing, is that stuff that, I mean, we are getting very close to a future where everybody has their own personal entertainment feed that has some things only they like.
Yeah.
I hope we don't ever get quite to that point, but I do like the balance where somebody has the chance to make something and not have to have a network executive say, nobody's going to get that.
Right.
Why are you doing a vampire?
Right. Yeah. Right. Exactly. Here's the crazy thing. They might have been right, but it still would have been a better show.
Yeah. Yeah.
Even if people didn't really totally get it, it would have been better.
It could have turned into one of those things that gets canceled early, but lives on as a cult classic.
Right.
Like Freaks and Geeks.
Right. Right.
Which, again, why was it ever canceled? But that's a whole nother story.
Right. Right.
That's a whole nother story. So this is exciting. White Wolf's back. Good job, White Wolf.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, happy for him.
Yeah. All right. So I guess that's it for our stories for today.
That's all we got.
All right. So we will be over on the Discord in a little bit. I'm going to make another drink and we'll get to the Discord. And people who are listening on the podcast, which, by the way, I have been so bad about this.
If you're hearing this, you're probably like catching up on episodes that have been, we're
like, so there's an audio podcast and a video podcast. It's easy. We do the video live stream. Here we are, right? Yeah. But then I'm supposed to put the thing up as an audio podcast afterwards. And I'm like 5 episodes behind. So people probably think we just quit doing it. So no, we didn't. So if you're listening to this, you already know that because you just got hit with a huge bolus of like 5 or 6 episodes all at once. And if you made it all the way through to this point, what is wrong with you? Get a life.
Right.
Yeah. But I'm glad you're here. And so, yeah, if you are, please go on Apple Podcasts, ignore the fact that we were bad about posting for a while. And give us like a 5-star review anyway. Just be like, I don't know. He told me to say 5 stars, so I did.
He said 5, right?
He said 5, so I give him 5.
And look, it's so weird the way these algorithms work. Like you would think, well, 3 stars is still pretty good. No, it's horrible. It's got to be 5 stars. Like it's
5 or nothing.
It's so stupid the way they do it. Like I would be happy with 3 stars. I would personally be like, oh, good. 3 is good. 3 is better than average. I'm happy with that. But no. The way the algorithm works and stuff, it's got to be 5. So if you're going to
using some app the other day and it popped up that stupid little over module or whatchamacallit. And it was like, do you like this app? Rate us 1 to 5. And so I'm like, 2, like I don't like that very much. And it, instead of submitting the review, it was like, oh, would you like to submit a trouble ticket? Because they're like, they don't want nothing that's not a 5.
Right. It's so dumb the way it's all set up and everything. But again, like I said, if you're not going to give us a 5, it's okay. Don't put anything. But
yeah. And if you're on YouTube, like and subscribe, do all that stuff. Algor is cool. Do it. And we'll see you on the Discord. If you are a Patreon subscriber, so go to Patreon, look for Solarian, subscribe to us, and then you get to go hang out in the Discord afterwards where we talk absolute nonsense.
Yeah, and we talk about anything you want to talk about. So it's wide open. Wide open.
Yep.
All right. Talk to y'all later.
Bye.